Hi everyone, I am here for a live with the fabulous Jamie Sawyer. If you are not familiar with Jamie's work, which I highly suspect you wouldn't be, she is the incredibly talented creator of um, so many incredible projects. Let me just see. Okay, here we go. This is giving me all kinds of prompts I didn't have before. My apologies. This is okay. Uh, there we go. Oh, I'm so excited. Let's see here. Yeah, so Jamie's the creator of multiple incredible decks. Just giving you a little intro. Hi, Jamie. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Excellent. Thank you so much for joining me. I have been really looking forward to having a chance to chat with you. This is so lovely. I've been following your work for ages, and it's just so exciting to see all of the things that you've come up with and created over the last few years. Yeah, so first and foremost, how's your weekend going?
It's good. It's good. I can't believe it's already Sunday. So,
I know, right? Time, what is time at this point? It's become this whole fluid, strange process. Yeah.
hmm.
Yeah. So I thought we could maybe start in the beginning. I'm so curious. I know that you are a retired tattoo
Hmm.
artist.
Yep.
So yeah, I'd love to know more about that aspect of your creative endeavors and how you got into that and how tarot came out of that as well. Because I know your Lenormand deck, especially, I think it's tarot inspired in terms of the art. So I thought
Hmm.
maybe we could start with tarot and then go into, or sorry, start with your tattoo
Hmm.
experience and then move into tarot from there. So
Hmm.
yeah.
Well, this month actually is 20 years that I have been a tattoo artist. So for
Oh, that's
me,
awesome.
it's just like knowing that I wanted to do art for a living and how to make that happen. And, I had gotten my first tattoo when I was 20 and
Nice.
decided that yeah, this is something I think I want to pursue. It was a lot harder back then to get into it than it is today because it was and still is to some degree a boys' club.
Yeah, definitely.
And I just made myself indispensable at this one shop, and I was like, "You're not going to forget me. You're gonna realize you need me." And I mean,
Yeah.
I was there for a few years, and then I moved shops, but it was just before that I had been like a licensed insurance producer.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, no. I was just like one day I was like, this is not art. I cannot do this. This is sucking my life.
Yeah.
And so I did. I kind of just jumped in, I was like, I don't care that I'm not going to make any money right away
Yeah.
doing this, like I need to be fueled by art and passion and just like enjoying that. So
Yeah.
that's kind of I think once I made that commitment, it wasn't like I was any good at it at first, but I had a lot of drive.
Absolutely. Well, like anything, I feel like it's a bit of a process too. Like you find that thing that piques your interest, and then over time, you develop your skill set and figure out. I would imagine that with tarot, like any form of art, it's all about finding your own style
Yeah.
and way of approaching it as
Hmm.
well, which is, I think, a very special part of the process. Yeah. So
It
how did
took
you find that? Like, sorry, I didn't mean
No,
to
that's
interrupt.
okay.
I'm
I mean,
curious.
it took a while for me to find my style, like the
Yeah.
style, like when people were like, oh, that's definitely your style. I didn't even realize I had a style because I was just
Yeah.
trying to draw what the client wanted,
Yeah.
and then it turned out like the way that I draw had a very, like my muscle memory and the way that I would draw was highly influenced by like my teachers at the time.
Yeah.
Um, my teacher, he was like a comic book artist, so everything was real dynamic, and then the other guy was like there was two guys that I learned to tattoo from, and they were very much both like into comics and I mean Batman and Harley Quinn. Like we
Yeah.
had so much of that, so it was like
Yeah.
my upbringing in tattooing was not necessarily traditional flash. It wasn't very,
Yeah.
like the sailor style stuff. It was the sailor
Yeah.
with a twist. So that was always where I
Yeah.
guess my roots were like, oh, you can take these images and make them your own. And so,
I love that.
through the years, that was how I guess my style was like it was there, and then it just goes, okay, I'm gonna actually come out of this, and it was like, oh, that's a Jamie tattoo. That's a Jamie tattoo, and it's
I love it.
it's I love it, but at this point, I don't owe it anything. 20 years is a long
Yeah.
time. It's allowed to
Oh,
graduate and move out of the house.
oh, absolutely. And I would imagine that things shifted and evolved over that time too. I mean, I don't think you can do anything for 20 years without it kind of
Yeah.
becoming its own thing and taking on a life of its own and evolving. And
Mhm.
yeah, oh, that's amazing.
Well,
That's
and
really great.
I mean, I've always kind of been into occult stuff and esoteric stuff, but like
Yeah,
my focus, I get very intimidated when I meet a reader or somebody who's been in the tarot community for as long as I've been in the tattoo community, because
yeah,
they
absolutely.
have, they've devoted that much time into this study, and I feel like such a baby
Yeah,
when it comes to that. But at that time that they were studying tarot, I was studying tattoos, so I was
yeah,
cultivating this life, but it was always on my fringes, and then so
yeah,
then I was like, oh well, I can start intermingling, like, when I first started, it was like kanji symbols and
yeah,
tribals. It wasn't the stuff that's out there now. Like, nobody came in and
yeah,
wanted hands holding crystal balls or crystals at all, like I would have
yeah,
been so
yeah,
happy to do those, but that didn't come until later in my career. And it was
yeah,
kind of like I started putting out more of what I wanted, of what I was studying, what I was getting into, and then those people
yeah.
started coming to me, so
Amazing. I feel like so much with creative endeavors, when you put out what you love and what
mhm.
resonates with you, there's something so personal and so magical about that. And I feel like that's a really great way to find your people because
Mhm.
there's such authenticity in that and it's really
Mhm.
coming from the heart. And so that creates something really special. Oh, that's
Mhm.
amazing.
Thank you.
I wanted to ask you
Mhm.
too, I'm assuming, is it the Sawyer's Path that is your
Mhm.
first book? Yeah.
Mhm. Mhm.
So what was the process of going from creating tattoos to creating a tarot deck? Because I feel like there is definitely tattoo influence in the
Mhm.
artwork that you have in this deck. So I'm just curious as to what your process was with that. Incidentally, I adore this deck card, by the way. Amazing. Absolutely amazing. When you said like sailor inspired, I was like, oh,
Yeah.
I'm thinking about that one. Yeah, that's
That
amazing.
one was one of the easier ones because I was like, well, of course it has to be a Jolly Roger
Yeah,
flag.
yeah,
Like,
yeah.
it's because when I started drawing it, so I have like one of the postcards here from,
Oh my
the
gosh.
Kickstarter. So,
Yeah.
um, the what had happened was I had done a tattoo of a Two of Cups on somebody, and then it was a
Mhm.
lot of fun, and it wasn't a traditional Two of Cups. It was like a
Yeah.
stylized version. So I was like, I
Yeah.
wonder what the Queen of Swords would look like as a tattoo. And so that's why she has like that, you know, the rose with the sword going through it, and very,
Yeah.
very tattoo inspired, because it was like each one of these I was drawing it as if it was going to be somebody's, like be on somebody, like maybe
Yeah.
without the background. So like the Queen of Pentacles, I created her to look like there's a classic like lady head in tattoo art. It's the question mark girl. So basically she's a
Yeah.
side profile with the hair that comes down and forms almost like a question mark. So
Yeah.
that's why that looks like that. And then
I love that.
I knew that she was going to be a mermaid. And oddly
Yeah.
enough, the Queen of Cups is the only one that I've actually tattooed.
Oh, wow.
So I did that on somebody's thigh before I even finished the deck.
Oh my
It
goodness,
was, she
that's
was like, I
awesome.
really want that. So that is the only one that
Yeah.
I've tattooed. And then this one is a stylized version of this, like with the hair
Yeah.
being very prominent. But
Oh, I love it.
so that, I mean, that was kind of it. And so then I just like was approaching each card as if I was to do it as a tattoo. So that's why the death card is a Jolly Roger,
Oh,
because I was
yeah.
like, yeah, pirate
Oh my
flag.
gosh, I love that. That's amazing.
Yeah.
So in this particular deck, were there any cards that you found particularly challenging or that you really looked forward to doing? Or was there a particular suit that you felt most drawn to? Like, what was that process like?
Um, the once I really like, so I started with all the royals. I started,
Yeah.
with the queens, and then I went the kings, and then I went down to the pages, and then like I had drawn them all pretty fast, like the concept
Yeah.
sketches, because I was sitting there and I was like, okay, and I'm still at this point very not, I'm new in my journey of learning everything. So
Yeah.
like I create something, and it's a reason for me to get to know what that image is supposed to be about, so I'm like reading
Yeah.
78 degrees at the same time, and then I'm looking at other online resources of like, well, this is what this person says about it. So I'm like taking notes, and I'm going, oh, all right, so how would I sketch that? You know, and some of them that would stump me, then I would look at the traditional Rider-Waite-Smith card and just put my spin on it, you know. But
Yeah.
so I did the majors last.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, which is really strange because normally
Yeah.
people start with the majors. So I did those last because I was like, all right,
Yeah.
well, I'm doing the suits.
Hmm.
And then when I colored them, the wands was the last suit that I colored, I believe.
Okay.
Yeah. So like you can almost see, I mean, the newer version, I've retouched a bunch of it so they look more
Hmm.
streamlined, but like you could almost see which ones I started first and then,
Yeah.
you know, but with coloring, I started with the majors first,
Oh,
you know.
interesting.
Yeah.
That's a really cool way to approach it, though, because it's like starting with, I mean, of course, minors are all day-to-day stuff, right? It's like the your day-to-day experiences, and then evolving from that to the big picture stuff, and then going in the reverse when it came to coloring it. I would imagine that would give everything a really cohesive feel, right? Because it was like a back and forth process. Oh, that's beautiful. Yeah, 78 Degrees of Tarot is absolutely incredible. I love that book so much. Um, I watched so many of your lives with Jenna as well when you guys were talking about it. I have this whole list of like book recommendations based on what you guys were saying. It's amazing. I love that so much. So this deck has also gone through a bit of transformation. Like I know that you have that the edition that came out that was like half and half, where it was like the sketches and then the card. So what was the process of revisiting the deck after you had created it, put it out in the universe, and then revisited? What shifted in the perception of the deck and how you saw
Well,
it? That.
it was what had happened was, you know, I had done the deck and then I had done my Lenormand deck. So when I
Hmm.
first created Sawyer's Path Tarot, I wasn't in the greater tarot community. Nobody
Hmm.
in this community knew who I was.
Yeah.
I bought like 250 copies.
Yeah.
It was just at, you know, at a whim, and I put them in my Etsy shop and people started buying them. And I was like, wow, like people
Amazing.
actually want this, you know? So
Yeah.
I had really only just wanted it. Truth be told, if I had known about like make playing cards or Printer Studio, I probably never
Mhm.
would have even published it. I just
Yeah.
thought that I had to buy 250, you know.
Yeah.
And then I think all in all, maybe I had ordered like 500 or 700 total of that first
Yeah.
edition. And then I
Yeah.
was like, and then I drew the Lenormand because I
Yeah.
wanted to create a deck that was simple for my mom
Hmm.
because my mother would
I
read
adore
Lenormand.
this book. It's
So
incredible. So
I have
lovely.
my Lino cut version here, but like
Oh,
I wanted to create a card, like a deck that was, because my mom's the kind of person that when she looks at a card, she can't help
hmm.
but look at it like an oracle, and she'll like look at all the little things in it, and I'm like, no,
Ah.
with Lenormand, it's just the house. You know, like she had a deck and she was looking at the bird card and there was like the
Yeah.
nest, and so she's starting to oracle out on it. I was like, Mom,
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
just the birds. You know, so I was like, I'm going to draw a deck that's just the symbols, that somebody who has a hard time detaching tarot brain, you know.
Yeah.
So
Oh,
after
amazing. You have Barney in here too,
I
right?
do, I
That's
have
oh
Barney in there.
my
Yep.
gosh.
Yep, Barney's in there.
Oh, I
Um,
love that.
but I know this is like straying so far, but I promise
No, no,
it
I love
relates to
it.
your question.
Yeah.
So then, and then after the Lenormand and after that, then I was like, oh, okay, I'm just going to mess around. And I had like a print on demand only version of the red pencil sketches, which was,
Oh,
you know,
amazing. Yeah.
the sketches of Sawyer's Path. Like I just had
Yeah.
it like
Very
up
cool.
on Make Playing Cards or wherever it was.
Mhm.
And then I drew Pocket of Piers.
Oh, yeah. This deck is incredible. And I wanted to ask you about that in the process of like who you reached out to and how you determined who was going to pick which cards, if that was something that you had in mind ahead of time. And I also wanted to ask you about the extra cards that you have, like the
Mm-hmm.
study and the teacher, and how that process came together. Because it's,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, incredible.
Well, so Pocket appears, as you know, like it's actually a year this on the
Mhm.
26th from when I launched the Kickstarter.
Yeah, it is too. I've
Yeah, so it's a year. So
yeah.
there was like a few people, because I was like sitting there thinking, and I said, well, if I was a tarot card, I would be the Eight of
Mhm.
Pentacles. You
Yeah.
know, that's just my life. And then
Mhm.
like talking with Jenna, she's obviously the Queen of Pentacles. So those were like no brainers. And I was like, my
Yeah.
mother. So I started
Yeah.
within my group that was really close to me. And I asked a few of my
Mhm.
friends, like, what would you be if you would be a card? You know, and they all basically got first pick.
Oh, amazing.
And then it was like, I think at that time you were on my Patreon and I kind of put out like an open call, like, what card would you be? And then people who kind of like commented, I was like, well, there's 78 cards I have to fill, so I'm going to just, you know.
Amazing.
And then there was other people who I had met, and so it was kind of
Yeah.
like I found that the cards kind of chose themselves at that point. Like I would be like,
Incredible.
a couple people who I had reached out to that were close friends just couldn't get their act together to give me a picture. And they were like, you know what, my life's just not in it. Like, it's
Yeah.
okay. I'm honored you asked. And so then I would ask somebody else, and they were like, my life is literally that card right now.
Oh my goodness.
So I realized that at that point, it was like, I wasn't choosing the cards. They were choosing, you know, who they wanted to be.
Yeah.
And I knew that I had wanted like the extra cards. Like I knew I had wanted Mary, and I knew I had wanted Rachel in there. And I was just kind of like, well, I'm not going to have them just assign a card, you know. And I reached out to Mary Kay Greer first, because I was like, you know, I'm creating this deck and I would love to put you in it. I really was thinking about doing like a teacher card. Yeah. I was like, or if you have a different card that you would want to be. And she was like, I love the idea of being a teacher card. And I said, okay. So that was when I was like, okay. And then I asked a few people for contacts for Rachel Pollack, and then I emailed Rachel, and she was like, oh, I would love to, you know. So that was that.
God. Yeah.
And then the third card, the study card, was just basically taking Mary's backdrop and putting putting you in the card.
I love that so much. Yeah, I hadn't seen that parallel before. That's amazing.
Yeah.
Oh, I love it. Amazing.
Yeah, so that's, I mean, it was definitely a deck, like a passion project that consumed me during the earliest months of, because I started it in August.
Yeah.
And then by March, I was ready to launch it. So it took me 100 days.
Wow,
to complete it. Yeah.
Yeah. It's amazing. It sounds like there was a lot of synchronicity in terms of like people coming together for cards and having connections to them, and just like things falling into place. I feel like, I mean, it doesn't always happen like that with creative projects, but I feel like when it does, there's something so magical about that process. And
I think it
happens.
It comes in really fast. It comes in like a whirlwind. You know, it's like when you get inspired to do something, it's really hard to put rules on it when you're just like, oh, I've got to create. I got to do this. I got to do that. And then after Pocket Appears, I definitely went through this like period of like withdrawal or mourning, or I was like in a low. It was like the intensity of a Kickstarter. I was unprepared for it. There was so much that I was feeling. So then I circled back to Sawyer's Path. I circled back to my home, you know, because Sawyer's Path was definitely my home deck. And I was like, what if I put some focus, some energy into doing one last printing of this deck, pairing it. So that's why it became like the, you know, the both the red and the green. And it was like, it helped me work through the feelings that I was feeling around Pocket Appears. It helped me like understand all that. And then of course I was like, well, I'm going to do a booklet with it. And this is how the transitions deck like came to birth, because I was like, well, if I'm going to do a booklet, it would be neat to have on the book. It would be neat to have like, you know, the card going from like, you're going to have your red pencil sketches. So my mother had written the guidebook for Sawyer's Tarot.
I have that one here actually. And I was going to ask you about that process too. It's the version, and it's been really fun actually walking through the book and reading all of your collective insights. Like, was it something that you worked on together? Okay, I thought so. Yeah.
When I was drawing the deck, I was like, oh, I want my mom to write the guidebook. Because at that time, I didn't have confidence enough in my own intuitive ability to write a guidebook. So she would look at the cards and maybe look at a few of my notes, but she would just kind of write what came to mind. So that's why like on the book that you have, it's my, like the preface in the beginning and then the end, but all the cards are her. That's not me at all. So then with the transitions and with this new version of it, the box set, I wanted to add my insights of why I drew the card to be that way. So that's why the red deck is like my insights, and then I kept my mom's insights intact. But I wanted the image to have both. So that's the only reason. So it was like, okay, it was like the red to this, and then I was like, well, okay, on this side it's going to be the red meaning, and then on this side it'll be the the color.
Yeah.
And then I'm looking at the images and I was like, well, I need a deck that looks like that. Like that's how my brain goes, because I'm going to
Yeah,
end up doing all
exactly.
78 cards anyway. So I was like,
Yeah.
what if I made it into a deck? So I made it into a deck.
Oh, amazing. What does the
That was an
back?
accident. Oh, the
Oh,
back, yeah.
happy accidents though are the best. Oh, I love that. So
So
it's
it's
got the,
like
yeah, it's got
I did it to where
oh,
color is color,
oh, I love that so
red
much.
is, you know, so it's like even
Yeah,
if you cut it in half, like you could,
yeah,
if you really wanted to, you could cut this in half and have like,
yeah. Oh, I love that so much. Oh, that's really cool. And you did a set of tarot tiles for that as well, didn't you?
yeah, I did. Any of my
Yeah.
decks all have, they're all tiles.
Oh, that's
You can always
amazing.
guarantee there will be a tile set if I make a deck.
Yeah, yeah, that's amazing. So tell me more about the tarot tiles because that's something completely new. Because I mentioned to my husband that I was doing the chat with you, and he was asking about your work, and I showed him the decks, and I was talking about, the guidebooks that you have and everything else, and then I talked about the tarot tiles. And he was like, "Oh, that's really unique." And I said, "Yeah," and I talked about, how you have the varnish finish, and then it's wood, and you've got the engraving in the back as well. And
Yeah.
it's really cool. So how did that come about? Like, what was your kind of
Um,
brainchild for that?
so of course, like the only set I have up here, because all my stuff is downstairs, is my mini portals, like the
Oh,
tiny
I love that.
portals.
Yeah. Oh,
Um,
that's beautiful in the back. I love it.
so it's like, you
Oh,
can see the
beautiful.
shine with it.
Yeah.
It all started because of Lenormand,
Okay.
because I wanted to take my Lenormand deck, and when I
Yeah.
was studying Lenormand, I was like reading a little bit about how Lenormand's meant to be read all 36 cards.
Yeah.
Of course, I still have never mastered the Grand Tableau because my brain just goes, ooh, squirrel, squirrel, squirrel.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
I agree with that 100%. I'm new to Lenormand actually. I've been dabbling in it over the past
oh
year, but I just kind of did a deep dive over Aquarius season
yeah.
and kind of went through and I've got a whole like pages and pages of journaling on all the different meanings and correspondences between like two card pairings
Mm-hmm.
because I find with Lenormand, I don't know about you, but I love
Mm-hmm.
doing multiple, like a one card pull doesn't work as well for me for
No,
that.
you can't. Yeah.
You
I
need
mean,
to
you
tell a
can, but
story.
yeah.
And it's how the cards relate to one another that really gives you the answer to your query, right? So it's
Hi, Sarah.
but yeah, so that's really cool that that was your inspiration for the tiles. It's
Well,
amazing.
so I was like, oh, and because at that time, like I create all
Mhm.
sorts of things out
Oh,
of resin. So
yeah.
like I was
Oh,
playing
I
with
love it.
lots and lots of resin, and these have
Yeah,
like crystals and
it's
stuff in them.
gorgeous. Yeah, I have
And
one actually on my shelf that I got at
oh
Calm
yeah,
Corner. Yeah,
yep.
it's really beautiful.
So at that time, I was doing a lot with resin. I was creating
Yeah.
resin jewelry. I was creating I used to do little resin Orgonite. Um, so Orgonite is like taking resin and metal and crystals, and
Mhm.
you kind of put like a certain amount in it, and like
Yeah.
the way that the resin like contracts on the crystal, it's constantly supposed to be activating the energy of that crystal.
Yeah, yeah.
But I would take old tattoo needles, not used ones, but just
Mhm.
old ones, and then I would
Yeah.
like split them apart and make little designs out of the needles, and I would put those
Oh,
in the resin
cool.
and then wire wrap it and stuff. So I was like, well, I still had the molds that I was using for those, and I was like, what if I put the Lenormand cards in there? So that was
Cool.
basically the beginning stages, and I was like, I could create a whole little mini set, and I did. Like the first set, they're like this big. I think I had shared on my Patreon, um, like one of the earlier videos of like how these are the first set that started everything, and they're full of bubbles and they're awful, but I was happy with them because it sparked like that seed,
Yeah.
and then I'm going, 36 cards is a lot easier to commit to than 78.
Yes, absolutely.
And that was back, like I've been doing this now for like playing with resin, I've been doing for over 10 years, but like
Mhm.
back with the tarot tiles and stuff, it's been like about 3-4 years, and in
Okay.
that time these molds did not exist. Like the ones
Yeah.
right now, like you could go on Amazon and you could get molds for all sorts of stuff, that all
Yeah.
different shapes, all that didn't exist when I first started. So I had to like figure out how to do it. Like I learned how to make my own molds. I learned how, so I was like, there's got to be an easier way. And that was how my tiles basically got born, was figuring out my process to do that, you know? So,
Yeah. Oh, I love that so much. That's incredible. And I
yeah.
love how you often share readings and you incorporate so many different elements of your decks. And I love that so much. Like often there's a Pocket Appears deck card that's like the center point, and then there's the tiles and everything else. And it's so beautiful, and the aesthetic of it is so lovely. So as someone who doesn't yet own a set of tiles, I will in the future, what's the process of pulling them? Like you just like shuffle them in a bag and
Yeah.
pull them randomly?
So Jenna, obviously her and I, like she just said,
Yeah.
the ice cube tray set, she has one of my first set of Lenormands. Like when I first met her, I was like, here, we just finally met. Here's a gift, you know? So, you know, she makes bags that match the tiles. And so I basically just, you know, blind pull, like it's like a, you know, snake. Like it's, you know, it's just kind of, there's no right or wrong way. I know, I know my friend Mitchell, who's the 8 of Cups. He has a basket that he found that was really cool at like some neat shop that he keeps his tiles in, and he just goes in and picks one. It's almost like, you know, a bowl of candy. So you can just pick one out.
I love that idea. That's like makes my inner child very happy. That whole idea of my grandmother used to have this very brightly colored bowl of jujubes that she had on this grandfather clock in the hallway, and like I still have memories as a child of the smell of them and just walking by and like surreptitiously like grabbing one and then walking off, right? But I love that associated with the tiles. Like it sparks so much joy and creativity, and really like when you're accessing your intuition, it can be so helpful to access that side of yourself, right?
Well, and that's like sometimes I'll close my eyes and I can almost feel like a tingly feeling, like it's like okay, that's the one I want, you know. But again, like with all of my stuff, I mean, I know you're familiar with some of the way I do the tarot casting. I try not to give too many people rules, you know. I try not to tell you this is how it's done, because I want your inner child to show up and play. I want them to come and be like, but what if we stacked them like dominoes and whichever one didn't fall down? You know, like I want you to play with them. Like tarot is so serious and we are so serious, but like why? It's just ink and paper. It's literally colorful images, you know? So like,
oh my goodness, yes. That's such a powerful part of this practice for me now. Like these are essentially pieces of paper, and the meaning that they have is what we give them. And yet there's also this archetypal structure that you can work from that is really helpful. So I've got this really ordered part of my brain, and then I've got this really chaotic part of my brain, that's typical Gemini, right? So like trying to blend the two. So it's like I've got the archetypal structure, but I also know that I have the freedom associated with the fact that this has the meaning that I give it, right? Like there's lots of rules around tarot, but I kind of love that anyone can access the practice in whatever way they see fit. Like to me, that's the core essence of it. It's what you bring to it, what you want to take away from it, and there's something for everyone. And to me, tarot should be accessible to anyone that comes to the practice. So I just love that there's so many decks out now, and everyone can find something that they resonate and see themselves represented in some way in the deck. And that to me is so magical, because it really allows you to step into the practice and personalize it and make it yours, right? Like
absolutely.
I love that candy bowl image. I just can't get that out of my head. It's such
as a fellow Gemini, I get it, you know, because like Jenna will laugh with me. She's like, your brain, she goes, I just don't understand how your brain works. And I'm like, my brain gets in my way sometimes, which is why I have to create these playful systems. So the only reason I pair Lenormand and Oracle and playful things with tarot is because if I'm only using tarot, my brain goes, okay, the codex says this card means this and this means that and this, and it doesn't matter what deck I'm using. My brain's going, well, that's the 7 of Wands, so that means you got to put up your boundaries, you know, and I'm like, says who? Says some dude from the 1900s, you know, like.
Exactly.
So the other stuff helps me get out of the Gemini mind. And helps, like, it's like pokes a hole and the intuition's allowed to come in and go, did you think of it this way? And I'm like,
oh, I love that so much. And mixing different disciplines, but different approaches to divination is so helpful that way too, because it gets you out of needing to stick to any one structure. Like I have to admit, when I first started looking at Lenormand, I was a bit challenged by the more rigid structure associated with it, because I was like, oh, this like absolutely means this or absolutely means that. But then the more I worked with it over the course of the month, and I do like a 2-card or a 3-card and like mix it up a little bit, and like shaking myself out of that like systematic approach. Like I have my Saturn in Virgo, so it's definitely this part of me that's like very like, you know, regimented, but then getting out of that is so helpful to allow me to access that intuitive side of myself that I tend to maybe resist sometimes, right? Because I'm overthinking it or getting stuck in that structure. So I love that so much.
Lenormand, that was definitely something at first when I had first started with it, because I was like, oh, but this means this and this means that. And then I realized, like, when I see Fox, like, what is it? It's Lenormand, yes, it's a structure, but it's also like learning a language, you know, like,
yes, absolutely.
Like, what does Fox mean to you? It consistently shows up for me as an entrepreneur card. So when I see Fox, it is not like, I look at it as Fox is like something that has to think outside of the box, you know? Yes. But that's the, like, I find that with Lenormand, it's consistency. It's, if birds means gossip and chatter, then it always means gossip and chatter for me. You know, so like, I want to say it was Rana George's book. She talks a lot about how the consistency, and then she also gives different scenarios. Like it could be a spiritual connotation. It could be a thing. It could, you know, so it's like yes, there's a system, but the biggest underlying system is consistency.
Yes. Oh my gosh. And Logan from The Precious Blossom, I love that in the guidebook, there's this invitation to trust your intuition. Like these are some explanations of the basic structure of the cards, but at the same time, if your intuition is telling you that it means something different, then that's great. Like I personally feel like foxes get such a bad rap because they're always like sneaky and like, you know, 7 of Wands, or 7 of Swords, they often show up like that, you know. But foxes are really incredible animals in so many ways, and they've got, I love that you look at it as entrepreneur, because there's a out of the blocks thinking and a different approach, and that kind of wiliness or kind of creative thinking, you can look at it that way as well, can be such a gift as well, right? It's not this negative thing. So
but then I guess it also depends on who you talk to as far as the system, because there's purists, but there's purists as far as tarot goes, you know, there's like, and like I've had people ask me, well, why haven't you created a Marseille deck? And I'm like, because I don't read with Marseille. Like, like I have a few of them, and I think that the artwork is cool, but I'm just like, it's just not for me. It's not a system that has ever really truly. It doesn't mean it never will be, but it does. You know, so it's kind of like, well, as a creative, I want to draw what I want to draw.
Yeah, exactly. And when I would imagine that when you're approaching creating a deck, there's a certain freedom that comes with it, because nobody's telling you. I mean, there's a basic structure that you can look at for tarot, but you can also make it something completely different and give a card a different meaning. Like that's one of the things I love about my deck collection. Has grown exponentially over the past couple of years. My husband just shakes his head at me. If he read tarot, he would have one deck. He doesn't. It's not his thing. He's so supportive of my practice and my approach to it. But if he did read, he would have one deck, and that would be the only deck he would ever need, and it would mean this, this, and that. But for me, I get inspiration from all of these different styles of artwork, and I love reading through guidebooks, because every so often I'll find something that will radically change how I see a card, and it opens it up for me, or an image that I look at, and I'm like, oh my God, that makes so much sense to me, right? And it completely transforms it. And there's something so magical about that process, you know, it's super exciting.
I love that you say your husband's like that, because Tim has learned to embrace it. He likes my Lenormand deck, so he will use that, and he'll go and he'll grab the book off the counter, you know, and he'll read his meanings. And then he likes Chris Ann's Light Seers, and those are the only decks he uses.
Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah,
and I'm like, okay.
Like I've offered to pull cards from him a few times, and he's like, no, I don't really not want to know what happens. And I'm like, well, I'm not telling you what happens. I'm just kind of, we're tuning into the energetics around something. And he's like, no, I'm good. I'm like, okay, that's cool. You know,
Tim always wants me to predict, like, yeah, you're going to win the lottery. Like, no, that's not how this works, you know. And then he'll get the same card. He'll get it over and over, and he goes, I don't think it works. I go, well, you need to ask different questions, you know.
It's not the system that's broken, it's the question. Yeah, exactly. But it's like, it's so funny. But and yet, if I'm in a crisis situation, or if I'm anxious about something, he'll be like, oh, well, why don't you pull a card for that? And the first time he said that to me, I was like, are you making fun of me? Because you better not be making fun of me right now. And he's like, no, I'm dead serious. And I was like, oh, you do respect it.
Yeah. Well, that's, I mean, at this point, Tim has to, because it's our whole business, you know. He's like,
Yeah.
He goes, if you had told me, you know, 5 years ago that we would be doing arts and crafts for a living, I would have laughed at you, you know? And I was
Oh,
like,
yeah.
yeah, but now
Yeah.
he knows, like, he'll look at a card. So each, like, as I'm drawing this new deck, he looks at it and
Mhm.
he looks for the little symbols that I put in it. And because
Yeah.
he knows them enough now that, like, he would probably
Yes.
be a good reader because he's so
Yeah.
skeptical,
Hmm.
you know? He would probably
Yeah.
be really good at it, but he's like, no, I'll let you do it, or I'll let, you know.
Yeah, no, it's amazing. And I find, I don't know about you, but tarot is such a great way to access that creative side of myself. Like,
Yeah.
and it's funny because Dominic, when I finally looked at his birth chart, I was so confused because I was sure there'd be tons of like Virgo and Capricorn in there, but he's Gemini, same as me, Gemini sun, because we're like 9 days apart, 3 years and 9 days apart.
Mm-hmm.
But he has a Cancer rising and a Pisces moon. And at first I was like, what? Like, because but then I looked at it and I'm like, okay, he's very grounded, he's very stable. But yet he has a close personal relationship with his inner child. Like he can get down and play. Like he built a 6 foot tall snow slide for the kids down our driveway, and he was up there doing it with them. He actually bruised his ribs because he took a huge fall. And I was like, "This is so cool." I'm like, yeah, there's that Pisces moon, right? There's that inner child connection, and like, very nurturing with the Cancer rising. So it's so interesting when you break things down and look at different. Like I've started really blending a lot of astrology and tarot, and it's really fascinating to see how those things work together. And looking at my kids' birth charts, I was like, oh yeah, that's totally them, right? Like it's really, really fascinating. So you mentioned your latest deck, and I would love to ask you more about that. That's the Out of Hand, right?
Yep.
Yeah, and to me, it seemed to, I just happened to have the Wheel of Fortune, and of course there's hands in this one too.
Well, those are going to be in the deck.
Oh my gosh, I love that.
Yeah,
Yeah,
those will
the
be.
feel of it seems very connected to the aesthetic of this particular deck.
That's so it's a companion deck to Pocket of Peers.
Oh,
However,
amazing.
I am drawing it in a way that like you don't have to have both if you don't want to. Pocket of Peers, obviously, and you know, as of right now, I don't know how many copies I'll get of Out of Hands, but like Pocket of Peers, we only had 1,000. We have less than 100 something left, I think. So it's like by like, once it's gone, it's gone. But so what I'm doing is I'm taking, you know, all the 7 cards in Pocket of Peers that have, so it's the Fool, the Wheel, and the World, and then all 4 aces. So those will all be in the deck. I'm keeping the card backs the same.
Oh, I love that.
And the edging will be the same. So that if you wanted to intermix and mix and match the decks, you can, you know. Like some people might not want my father in their deck. So they might swap out the 3 of Pentacles with the 3 of Pentacles with the hands, or vice versa, or work with them in tandem and be like, what might this card? And that's my stepfather. So I have both, you know, and you know, you pull it and be like, what might that be in a handing, you know, a hand situation. It's also inviting, the whole concept is kind of to invite the querent or the seeker into the scenery.
Yeah.
I was a little stumped with it, but then I just kind of asked, like, you know, I was like, okay, I really want to work more on this deck. The muses, if this is meant to be, let it be. And then last week it was like, hey, I know you're sleeping, but how about this? And it was like, all of the images started to come into my head. And literally it was like 3 a.m. and I'm going, I want to go back to sleep. But it's like, nope. This is, you know, so I woke up at like 5.
Yeah.
And wrote out all the concept sketches, like all the concepts for it. And so now it's easier because now I have a visualization for each card that, you know, and I was like, oh, like, I just shared the other day, I shared the Strength card, which is my mother-in-law quilting.
Oh, I love that.
And I'm thinking about like, so I texted Carol and I said, can you send me a picture of you hand quilting, you know?
Yeah.
And so then I did it and I put all the symbols of the Strength card into the quilt. You know, so her hands, and you think about it, like when you look at old fragile hands, you think about, oh, she's so fragile.
Yeah.
Yeah, but what brought her to this point? It's patience. Like, because me, strength is not about being strong. It's about persevering. It's about getting through things in life. It's the patience to go forward, to do it, right? Creating a quilt takes a lot of patience.
Oh my God, yes, I've done a few of them actually for my kids. I did a crib quilt for each of them, and I used the machine for it. I didn't hand stitch very much of it. just finishing off the borders and stuff. But the amount of work and tenacity and endurance that goes into that process is huge. I'm with you. I mean, strength can kind of equate to brute strength, but to me, it's like that endurance test. It's that perseverance. It's like having the resilience to get through whatever life throws at you. It's like, I don't know, with the lovers, this is kind of related, but not, I don't think of the lovers as Romeo and Juliet. Like, I actually get really angry when anyone brings that up. I'm like, no, it's that 8-year-old couple that's walking down the street beside each other, maybe even holding hands, looking like they will just love each other, but they actually like each other. Like, at that point in life, that to me is love. It's having that commitment, that resilience, that dedication, right? Like, to me, that is a true example of love.
I've already drawn the lovers, and it's on the teaser picture for the deck, which I posted the other day. It's on the one, and it's the card that has 3 hands. So you've got the one coming up like this, and then 2 coming in. And in my mind, it could be, you know, it could be polyamory, but it could also be friendship. It could just be like the choices that you make in life to go on these. And then the backdrop of the hands is a bunch of Polaroids. So it's like sitting down and like going over and like, oh, remember when we did that? Remember? And you know, it's like you said, like when I look at lovers, I don't think about just the love, because for me, love is like I love that you brought up, I have to like you. Like, I often quote Deadpool. I really liked her. I love her, but I really liked her. So to me, that is the epitome of lover. Because love, you can say, like, Tim and I don't use that word. We say, I heart you, or because love, I feel people throw it around and they don't really know what it means. And it's like, I'm choosing to share space with you. I'm choosing to invite you into my weird, like, isolated world because I like you enough to bring you into that space, you know? So it's like, like, I don't think that there's a difference in the love that I have for my husband and the love that I have for my best friend. You know, like, I love Jenna just as much as I love Tim. But it's because I can be my authentic self. And when you choose to allow that down, so it's like, I love that you bring that up, because people are like, oh, it's a relationship, it's romance. It's like, no, it's choice. Like, you have a choice to be with this person if they're a piece of shit or not, you know?
Exactly. No, 100%. And that's one of the things that I've started looking at with the Lovers card. Like, it can have to do with relationships sometimes, but I think we need to celebrate platonic love as much as we celebrate romantic love, because some of my core people, one of my closest friends I met in April of my graduating year, she just happened to be sitting behind my best friend at the time, and I randomly asked her if she wanted to go to a theater production with me. And she came. We went to a pub beforehand to grab a bite to eat, and we've been fast friends now 25 years plus later, right? And she's one of my core people, and I love her dearly, and that love isn't separate from what I have for my partner. There's similarities and there's differences, but it's also, like you said, about choice, and that's a huge part of the Lover's card too. Who do I choose to let into my strange and weird existence? Who do I choose to allow to see me for my pure, authentic, wacky self? Right? Like, there's nothing more powerful than someone else allowing you to be fully seen and accepted just as you are, right?
There used to be, there was a commercial years ago. My brain always goes back to like videos or commercials or whatever.
Oh, 100%.
It was like it was like one of those, I think a MasterCard. Was that the one was like priceless? Remember, like, the punchline was like priceless?
Or maybe it was American Express. I can't remember which one.
It was one of the credit card companies, but it was like, you know, finding, like, going here, and it showed this little weird kid dancing around school and doing all this stuff, and like all the other kids are looking at him, and then it shows him coming up to these other 2 kids, and he's doing his little thing, and then they respond with doing something. So it's like finding people who get you, and it's like priceless, like, because everybody else looks at you and they go, what is she on? And it's like, oh, that's just Jamie. Like, that's fine. Or that's just Jules. Like,
yes. Oh my gosh, 100%. And I don't know about you, but the things that I used to feel self-conscious or weird about when I was a kid, because I was bullied for like 10 years through school, and I was like the school freak, school loser, and all the things I used to hate about myself that made me so strange are the things I celebrate now. And the things that the people who truly love me celebrate about me now. And there's such a freedom in being able to let your freak flag fly. Like, we watch Shrek the musical all the time, and that's like my favorite song. And that celebration of being exactly who you are is so incredible. And I don't know about you, but this particular community, like, I've been involved in a lot of different things before this. I did a detour into yoga and health and nutrition and all these different things. And I remember literally being in the kitchen with Dominic, early stage of the pandemic, and just
Mhm.
like bursting into tears and feeling so alone and isolated. And I said, I just don't feel like I found that place that I belong yet.
Mm. Mhm.
And he turned to me and he said, I don't think the problem, he's like, the problem is not you. You
Mhm.
just haven't found your people yet.
Yeah.
A few months later, I ditched the health and nutrition, which I was so
Mhm.
jaded and disillusioned with anyway. And I finally came out of the tarot closet, so to
Mhm.
speak. I've been practicing for probably about 15 years now,
Mhm.
but it was always something that I held really close to my
Yeah.
chest. And finally, I set up this account and I kind of came out with it.
Mhm.
And I found this incredible community of supportive,
Mhm.
like-minded people, and the ability to be yourself in all
Yeah.
capacities. It's such a gift, and to find a community that supports that and
Mhm.
fosters that is so incredible. And I'm so grateful for everything that I found within this. I mean, nothing is perfect and without its faults, but really
Absolutely. Yeah.
all in, it's really quite powerful the
Mhm.
way people band together and being able to have a conversation with you. I'm in Nova Scotia, you're
Mhm.
down in the States, and it's Pennsylvania, right?
Yep. Yep.
Yes. Um, for us to be able to have this conversation, like I just
Mhm.
keep thinking about the 1918 flu pandemic and how
Yeah.
isolated everyone was and lack of
Yes.
communication. But like, I mean, I'm really hoping to be able to make it to some conferences and stuff
Yes.
down the road so I can meet
Mhm.
people in person. But it's like, I've met so many dear friends
Mhm.
that I've been able to connect with. And it doesn't matter that we've never met face to face because there's so
No,
many
it's.
bonds that you can form with people at a distance, but it feels intimate at the same
Mhm.
time. So this is kind
Well,
of
it's,
veering off
you
topic
know
a
what it
little
is?
bit, but
No, but it is. It's a community of people who don't want to have small, meaningless conversations.
yes, I've
You
never
know,
been good at that. I've
no,
never been good
I'm not
at
good at
surface
small talk.
level. No,
No.
I hate it with passion. It's like, let's have a real conversation.
Hmm.
Otherwise, I'm just gonna, carry along.
Yep. I know. It's going to be like, so how's that weather? Huh. It's like, but with the cards, like when you do find yourself
Yeah.
able to go to a conference, and I'm excited because I'm going to Omega in July, and Jenna's already booked her flight, so it's going to be the first time
Yes.
we've seen each other since
Oh
2020.
goodness. Wow.
Um, and then we'll both be vending and at Newt's, which is the Northwest Tarot Symposium in
Yeah.
October.
I've been eyeing that. I don't
Can't
know if I'm going to be able to
wait.
make it happen, but I don't know. I have it in the back of my mind because it would be so incredible to be able to share
Well,
actual
that's the thing.
experience
You
with them.
meet these people who you've only met online, and it's like an instant reunion of just like,
Yeah,
hey, I know we've never actually met in person. Like, I thought you'd be
yeah,
taller. I thought you'd be
yeah,
shorter,
yeah, yeah.
But it's literally like a coming home. It's like
Yes.
these. So we joke that this is just ink and paper, right? But it
Yeah.
really isn't. It's so much more because it helps
Oh,
connect. It's the
huge.
icebreaker,
Yes,
you know?
absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. No, I love that so much. Yeah, and I mean, I'm so excited about your new deck and how it
Mm-hmm.
connects, which I hadn't fully realized to this one as well. Like,
Yeah.
I love the hands and what you said
Mm-hmm.
as a total shifting gears, but I love what you said about being able to put yourself in the cards. Like I was saying earlier, like being able to put yourself
Mm-hmm.
in your tarot practice and see yourself represented in some
Mm-hmm.
capacity. So this bird's eye view of
Mm-hmm.
you could be the person holding that cup is so powerful because it helps you step into that
Yeah.
depth, right?
And
Like that's
there's a
incredible.
couple cards that I realize have to be from like not necessarily this
Yeah,
perspective, the
yeah,
first person. Like so like the
yeah.
Empress card, I found a picture of my mother when she was pregnant with me. So she was
Oh,
25. She's like
wow.
this glorious hippie, queen. She's
Oh,
wearing like super short shorts in the picture, and
yeah.
she's got like a pot leaf shirt on, and she's rolling up her shirt to show the
Oh
belly.
my
So I was
God.
like, that is Empress, but like I cut off her head and I just kind of
Yeah,
made it zoomed in because then I'm going, okay, some of these cards you're going to look at it and be in an observational standpoint because I've
yeah,
never been pregnant,
yeah.
but I can look at it and be like, that's creation.
Yes,
Um,
absolutely.
and then the sun card, which is what I shared today. And I didn't even realize it was the equinox. And I was like, oh, what a perfect card to share on the
So
equinox,
perfect.
is a
Yes.
picture of holding the child up. But even the baby's face is distorted because I've got the
Yeah,
feather cross. So
yeah,
there are ones, and even the high priestess, which is the picture I sent
yeah,
you,
yeah,
it's you're going to somebody else to kind of seek out that wisdom that they already know that you have. So they're holding the
yeah,
scroll like kind of like
yeah.
this, but it's still inviting you to come in and sit and hold like session with that person.
Yes. Oh, that's amazing. I love that so much. The other thing I wanted to ask you about too, because you'd referenced the nature portals, and I'd love to find out more about the process of creating this deck. As you know, I have the incredible journal that you created for this, and I actually went through when I was doing all the cards and like literally colored each of them every day and like
I
wrote the
love
journal
it.
and stuff. It was such a beautiful process,
I
and I
think
was,
that's how you and I connected, was because you kept
yeah,
tagging me and
yeah.
I was like, oh my God, somebody's doing exactly what I hoped they would do with this.
I always worry about that because I'm like, I do my daily card pulls and I use the same decks for like a month, and I'm like, are people getting really annoyed that I'm checking them every single day? Like, oh my gosh. Um,
I loved it. I was so floored. I was like, yes, she's doing it.
it was such a magical process, and there's so many different aspects of yourself that you unpack when you go through that, right?
Mhm.
Like this card is so beautiful, and finding aspects of myself in this beautiful creature was so magical, right? So what was your inspiration for creating this deck? And I love the circular format too. It's so beautiful.
So the circular format, I think it was because I was listening to one of Teresa Reed's
Mm.
the terabytes, and she was interviewing
Oh,
somebody and they were talking about round decks, and I hadn't even thought about
yeah.
it being round until that point, and they said
Yeah.
it has a gentler nature when you shuffle them.
Yeah,
And it was
that's
like you
true.
kind of like let them fall together, and then when you put them down you can read them in 365 degrees. It's
Hmm.
not just upright or reversed, it could be in any. So I was like, oh, this is going to be a round deck. Like that at that
Yeah.
moment I was like, that's, even though my mind doesn't allow me to lay the card in the way that I pull it, because it's like, nope, it
Yep.
has to be upright. Like that's
Oh,
just
yeah, me
my
too.
nature.
100%. I actually will reference the book to make sure that I've aligned it properly when I'm laying out my cards. Because like I said, that Saturn in Virgo, like
Yeah, it's like
I'm
this is how
horribly
it has to be.
disorganized. Like I'm horribly untidy, but I'm hyper organized. So it's
Right,
like this
right.
really weird mix of like, yeah, but I get that 100%.
Yep. So then the animal deck was actually my hardest because oracles don't have a structure, but I
Yeah.
knew that I wanted specific animals in the deck, and a lot of
Mhm.
them, like my friend Jenna Matlin had said that the deck reminds her of the Northeast so much.
Yes.
Like
Oh my
she had
goodness.
moved down to, she'd moved to, I think she's in North Carolina now, but she had lived in
Okay.
Philly for a long time.
Yeah.
And so when she moved, she was like, it's like having a piece of home. There's like maybe 4 or 5 obviously animals that
Yeah.
aren't indigenous to this area,
Yeah.
but I would see, oh, what card am I going to draw today? And it would be like
Mhm.
a blue jay outside trying to get my attention, and I was like,
Oh
okay,
my
so it's going to be
God.
a blue jay.
Yeah.
So I let the animals pick me. That's why there's a lot of bugs in it. That's why
Yeah.
like, so I was like,
Yeah.
all right, I know there's going to be 52 cards. Deer, obviously. Dog, obviously. The dog in that deck is my beloved Stan. He was my first dog that I ever had.
Oh,
That's why there's
beautiful.
a rainbow, because he's
Yeah.
passed. Like,
Oh.
but
I love that you have Barney in the Lenormand deck and then Stan in the nature portals. Like it's such a beautiful way to commemorate them. Pippin's in here. He's sleeping. I got my husband a beanbag chair and a really fluffy, like rust-colored blanket, and Pippin has claimed it as his own. So every day when Dominic goes to start work and sit in
mm-hmm.
his beanbag chair, he has to like oust Pippin because he's claimed ownership. He's sleeping there now.
Yeah.
He's the first dog that I've ever had. And the relationship that I have with him is so special. Like sometimes I'll tear up
So
thinking about
insane.
him not being there because I know that dogs'
Mm-hmm.
lifespans are shorter, and I just can't even wrap my head around that. Like,
Yes.
so,
Yes.
so the fact that you've been able to immortalize your
Yes.
beautiful fur babies in these projects is so
Mm-hmm.
special. Like
Well,
that's
the cat
incredible.
card is also my cat. I have him tattooed
Oh,
on me, so
oh my
it's.
goodness, yeah. There's going to be a Pippin tattoo in my future, 100%. We have this black cat named Cassiopeia. She's my daughter's cat. She was canvassing for a cat for the longest time. And then we ended up downtown at a shop
Mm-hmm.
and this cute picture of this little black kitten. We used to have a black cat named Wes, who was so lovely. And there was a little picture of this sweet little black kitten.
Mm-hmm.
Next thing you know, we're heading to the shelter that afternoon and we have a cat.
And you have a cat,
And
yeah.
it's been so lovely for Adele just navigating the pandemic and having that
Mm-hmm.
companionship and,
Well, it's
just
just
enjoying her
unconditional love,
and
even though
yeah,
there's responsibility there. It's still unconditional
huge.
love.
Yeah,
It's.
huge. But it's also interesting because she's the cattiest cat that we've ever had. Like she's got the biggest amount of catitude, and like if you
Yeah.
touch her wrong, like watch out. And yet she's also very like affectionate in her
Mm-hmm.
own way. And
Yes.
it's so funny because we had cats and then they passed, and then now we had Pippin for a while, and then having a cat again is so beautiful because I'd forgotten what that energy is like, and the two
It's
of
so
them are
different.
so
Yeah.
different, and they complement each other, and it's really beautiful. I was just thinking with the nature portals, I love this otter card so much. Um, I think partly it's because I lost touch with my inner child and sense of play for so many years, but otters have always had a really special place in my heart because of that playful energy and that lightness and that sense of partnership and connection. So where did the inspiration for this one come from?
The otters, I I love otters as well. I mean, we don't
Mm,
have sea otters; we have river otters here. But I
yeah,
like the sea otters just because I like to be able
yeah,
to draw them in that way. And I
yeah.
think like the whole idea that they stay close to each other and they hold
Mhm.
hands, and but they're
Yes.
jerks. Like
Oh, they are.
they're not nice
100%.
animals. But I was like, I love otters. I don't care if they're
Yes.
jerks because you know what?
Yeah.
They're also like they could be that feeling of like you don't get to come play with us. Like we
Hmm.
might be cute, but you can observe us from a distance. You come here, I'm
Yep.
gonna rip your face off.
Oh,
Like
absolutely. Absolutely. Oh, 100%. And that's 100% Cassie too, which is hilarious. It's like, yes, 100% on her own terms, whereas Pippin is so codependently attached to me that if I leave the room, he's like following me, right?
yeah.
It's so interesting with the pandemic too, because when we were in Halifax, we lived in an apartment and we had him trained to go in his kennel when we went out for the afternoon because Dominic was at the office and if we were going venturing out, and he was perfectly fine. Now he can't even stand not to be in the same room as us. And Dominic's working from home, so we're constantly there. So like it's become this big debate. If we ever leave the house, all five of us, what is he gonna do?
Yeah.
It's
That's how Barney is. Barney, like we say, he loves us too much.
yes,
It's too
yes,
much.
yeah, totally different sense of connection, I guess.
Mhm.
Cats are as fiercely independent as dogs are codependent. It's fascinating. So I also wanted to ask you about the wood engraving that you do. I have a couple
Mhm.
of your casting boards,
Mhm.
and I'd love to know what the process was with creating them because you've come up with all of these incredible designs, and the
Mhm.
late Lotus items that you just came up with too, with the deck boxes, like, and I know sometimes most of your tiles come in wooden boxes as well that
Mhm.
are engraved. So, what was the process of starting to create all of that, and how did
Those
that happen?
the process of the casting boards was basically again it started with Lenormand because I was like, oh,
Mm-hmm.
I want to do a grand tableau.
Mm-hmm.
So for me, it was a learning tool. And then I realized I
Mm-hmm.
wasn't going to use it as a grand tableau. And I started layering
Mm-hmm.
the cards. And I said, well, why don't I create a backdrop that mirrors the card placement? So that was that.
Yeah.
And then the drawing is just no different than how I would draw for a tattoo. So I'm like, oh, okay,
Yeah.
I want to, the lotuses is the way I would draw for a tattoo. So
Yeah.
embellishing the box, like functional art,
Mm-hmm.
figuring out aesthetically what I think looks pleasing and putting
Yeah.
it on it. And I mean, we have like an industrial grade laser. So we just,
Mm-hmm.
I draw it and I give the files to Tim and I joke, he pushes buttons. He
Oh,
does
that's
more than that, but he pushes the buttons.
yeah, yeah. So you guys have a whole setup at home now to create everything in-house. So what was
Yeah.
the process of like figuring out what you were going to need and laying everything out and
It was all very
yeah.
organic. I started out with like a hobbyist thing, and then as Tim is always well, if you spend more money, you get better product and you can have better
Mhm.
productivity. And so
Yeah,
at first it was a lot of an investment, but then I'm going, you know what? It makes more sense. Like it's
yeah.
cut the production time in half.
Hmm.
So while it was like sticker shock at first, now I'm like, well, I'm
Yeah,
glad we did that, but
yeah. Absolutely. It's always a bit daunting when there's the original setup cost for things
mm-hmm.
because it, like you said, the sticker shock, but then over time it makes itself back
It makes
over
it,
and over
yeah.
again. And being able to do something like that in-house rather than needing to outsource it or whatever
Yes.
else, I mean
Yes.
that's huge as well, right? Just like,
Mm-hmm.
yeah. Oh, that's amazing. So with your decks, I know is the Lenormand still available for print on demand, or is that one
Not
like how?
yet.
Okay.
I have Lenormand tiles in the color
Hmm.
version, and then I
Yeah.
have the lino cuts I have
Lino
here at
cut. Yeah,
home.
that's beautiful.
And then these I have as print on demand, which is the lino cut, but in
Yes.
the orange to
Yeah.
black fade. I will
Yeah.
have the color versions back, but they're
Hmm.
going to be probably towards the mid to end of summer because I
Nice.
don't crowdfund
Yeah.
those or anything. I just pay for
Yeah.
like 250 at a time, and then
Yeah.
it takes me a little while to sell out. So
Yeah.
but
Well,
I
that's amazing.
wanted I wanted to give the lino cut a little bit of time in the spotlight,
Yeah.
because I had so
It's
much fun
beautiful.
carving that. So
Oh, yeah.
yeah.
So what was the process like for that?
It was just, my mom and I had taken a class in October, and I was like, oh, I did this in high school, like the linoleum block
Yeah.
printing. And it just rekindled that. And I wanted to draw,
Oh,
I wanted something to carve. I was like,
yeah.
well, I have all these, my Lenny deck images are perfect for this.
Yeah.
And then so I did the rider card, and I was like, I'm not creating a deck. I'm creating a deck. After I was like 8 cards in, I was like, well, I guess I'm doing this in, my Lenny cards and lino cut. So
I would imagine that happens frequently where it's like, yeah, this project's just for me, and then it evolves into something that everyone gets to
I have to
experience.
learn to not say that, yeah, this project is just for me, like there's no
Oh,
such thing.
gorgeous. I
Yeah.
love that so much.
So while
Yeah,
they're
the
the same
color
images,
is beautiful.
they have different backgrounds, so they're
Yeah.
like,
Oh, beautiful. The contrast of the black and sepia tone is just
yeah,
beautiful.
I love
Oh,
it.
so cool. Oh, gorgeous. Yeah, the cards have a totally different feel with that. Like I mean, I love the color that's in these ones, but there's something so magical about the contrast with that too. I'm just trying to find I still have yet to have all of the numbers completely memorized and going through here. But yeah, yeah, because it's got a very different feel
Mhm.
with all the bright colors and the contrast. Oh, that's lovely. And then how
And
did you end up doing the fade one with the orange and red and black? It's beautiful.
well, I
Wow.
just
Oh my
I
gosh.
re-stamped them all.
Oh,
So
gorgeous.
the fun thing with the block printing is, you can
Mhm.
put like black on one side, and so I did black,
Yeah.
red, and orange, and then just rolled
Oh,
brayer and then stamp them
beautiful.
so that they, give that
Oh my goodness. Wow.
the
I love
bags are.
the moon cycle. Beautiful.
Mhm.
Oh, that's so gorgeous. So for your out of hand tarot, what is your printing process going to be? Are you going to do another Kickstarter or are you going
Yeah,
to? Yeah.
I'll most likely do another Kickstarter because I'll be using the same printer that we used, since I
Mhm.
want the card stock and everything to be the same.
Yeah.
The box will probably be a little different because it's not
Mhm.
going to be, it's a companion to Pocket Appears, but it's not a
Yeah.
clone, so it's going to be a
Yeah.
little bit different.
Oh,
Um,
that's awesome.
I'm trying to do at least 1 card a day. So if you're on my Patreon, you get so the patrons today already got the time lapse video of
Oh,
my
amazing.
9 of Swords, which I will release to Instagram tomorrow. But
Nice.
so that was a lot of fun. So
Yeah.
each day I'm trying to do at least 1 card.
Yeah.
If I can't do 1 a day, I'm going to try and do 5 a week. So that way,
Nice. Yeah. That
but
allows some flexibility, but also keeps you on
hmm
track. It's
yeah.
awesome. I find the need for that too. I need to give
hmm
myself at least a bit of schedule, but also some
hmm
room to breathe around that. That's
hmm
amazing. Oh, I
Yeah.
love it.
So I'm
That's
excited
really
about
cool.
it.
Yeah, that's incredible. So you've also done a lot of collaborations with the
hmm
tarot tiles with different tarot artists. So what's that process like? Is it people that contact you? Do you reach out? Is it kind of
It's
something that comes
It's a little
together?
bit of both.
Yeah.
I've kind of taken a little step back from the collabs because it's
Mhm.
like some of them do really well, and others
Yeah,
it's like I'm really excited about the deck and they're really obviously excited about their deck, but then we don't sell
yeah,
any, and I'm like, well,
yeah.
that's like a lot of, not a waste of time, but it kind of is a waste of time. So
It's a big investment. Yeah.
yeah, so we have it now where like collaborations are kind of on hold as far as like bringing them into our catalog. But if
Mhm.
somebody is an indie deck creator and owns all the rights to their artwork and they want a set of
Mhm.
tiles, we can absolutely make them a one-off set. But it's
Oh, cool.
for us to like bring it into our catalog. It's like the ones
Mhm.
that we have, we're just kind of allowing them to run out,
Yeah,
which is nice because it makes them limited
yeah,
edition. Not everything
yeah.
is going to constantly be out there, and it's okay for
Mhm.
things to be limited. So
Yeah,
yeah, so it's just kind
yeah.
of the way
Well,
that
because
we.
that's,
Mhm.
sorry, go ahead.
No,
I
that's
didn't
okay.
interrupt you. Yeah, no, I was just going to say, because that's the nature of it with a good number of your decks too.
hmm
Like the Sawyer's Path is
hmm
done now, right? Like this original
hmm
edition isn't being printed again.
Yeah.
And there's something really special about it's nice to be able to access something all the time, but there's also something really special about
hmm
having something that is what it is. And it was there
hmm
for a moment in time, and
Yeah.
that's the entirety of it, right? Like
Well, and
that's
that's like
really
with Sawyer's Path. The amount. I think
Mhm.
we have less than 100 of the box sets left.
Oh wow.
And people are like, well, I don't want the red deck. I'm like, well, then you got to go find one that's used because I don't have just the Sawyer's Path deck. Like
Yeah.
it only comes with the red deck, And then
Yeah.
once those are gone, that's gone. And I'm not going to keep reprinting it because it tethers me to a project that is no longer where I'm at artistically. Like I'm allowed to say goodbye and retire something, you know, like this concept that people won't allow people to retire. It's bananas to me.
It's up to you to decide what you do want to continue with or not. And in letting that go and be what it is, you're allowing yourself space creatively to move in new directions and to develop something fresh. And you know, that, like you said, is in alignment with where you're at now. Because as an artist, I'm sure that your art style has evolved over the past year, let alone the past 10 years, 15 years.
Easily. Yeah.
You know,
easily.
Yeah, that's really amazing. So what is the guidebook going to be like with the Out of Hand Tarot?
The guidebook, I've actually, it's so funny. I've thought a lot about it. It's not going to be like Pocket of Peers. It's not going to be big. It's going to fit in the box. I'm not doing that again. I'm not like doing like.
It was a huge undertaking because this is
so
significant. Big. I put all my stickers on the front and back because I had to. But I mean, this is an intensive project.
It's a lot.
The insights that are included are incredible. But I think every time I pick it up and look through it, I'm like, this is a hefty project. Like, there's a lot that went into this, and just the sheer collaboration with everyone involved. I mean, I would imagine that as magical as that process is, it also in some
it was a lot. I think that was part of the morning feeling afterwards. I was like, holy crap, now what? So for Out of Hand, I'm going to keep it simple as far as like just something that can go with the book, you know, with the box, probably like 100 pages, but it'll be a small thing. And if I do choose to do something like Pocket of Peers size, it's only going to be print on demand. I'm not going to have any. I'm not going to warehouse. I'm not going, you know, like.
The overhead
of logistics. Yes.
Exactly. Like, I appreciated that I was able to do the print on demand with this because, you know, it's all set, it's ready to go, it's great. But it means that you don't have to have piles and piles of books in your house, and it's like a supply and demand kind of thing. As much as are needed can be printed, and then, you know, that's a really great approach. And I would think too with the Out of Hand, because it is such an intimate, personal deck, like you can really see yourself inserted. Having a smaller guidebook makes sense because then it allows you to follow your intuition a little bit more. You know, a few signposts to get you in the right direction if you're new to tarot, but there's that space to explore and to see, okay, well, what does this card mean to me? If I've never looked at it, how it relates to me personally, how can I invest myself in the card? How can I put myself into the High Priestess if I've never seen that before, or the Page of Swords or whatever else, right? There's something magical about that process.
Well, I think I like to empower people to do their own thing. And I do admit that I get frustrated when people are like, well, what does this mean? I'm like, I don't know. What does it mean to you? Like, like I can tell you what it means to me, but we've lived a vastly different life. Like, it doesn't make it law, you know? And I feel like guidebooks sometimes can detract from people being able to be like a little bit deeper. So I need to, keeping things simple is not really easy for me, but I am keeping it simple, like mantra, keep it simple, Jamie. Don't.
Because I mean, I've said this before, even on this chat, but being able to make this practice your own is part of the magic of tarot. And there's so many different systems. If you're looking at Tarot de Marseille and, you know, Thoth style, Rider-Waite-Smith, I mean, there's so many different structures that you can work from once you find something that resonates for you, or deviate from that completely and look at oracles, which are very wide open. And I find personally sometimes challenging because I don't have a structure to work from. And then Lenormand, which is like the other extreme of like much more structured, you know, but finding that thing that works for you and then giving yourself permission to let go a little bit and see what comes up and trust that intuitive process is so magical. Oh, that's amazing. Wonderful. That's good. It's averaging time-wise. Oh, wow. Yeah, I've had you for over an hour. Thank you so much.
That's what happens when Geminis collide.
Yes. Oh, my gosh. Talk about Bird's card. You know, it's like the constant chatter. I love that so much. It's funny. I realized a few years ago that I'm actually very much of an introvert, which a lot of people who know me well just kind of shake their head. But it's so amazing when you meet with somebody who's like-minded and you can talk about things you're passionate about and conversation
and they're like, oh my gosh, it's like 4 a.m. What happened?
I know. That's the sign of a good friendship when you can sit down and like 3 hours go by and you're like, oh, I thought that was 10 minutes. That's amazing. Absolutely. So For anyone who is jumping on the call now, where can they find you? What kind of updates? I know that you have shifted a lot of your work and platform over to Patreon, which is amazing because I feel like there's a lot of issues with Instagram, as we all know. So being able to find a space where we can come together as a community that's somewhat separate of the social media giant known as Meta.
So
really
crazy.
Yeah.
I'm on Patreon, patreon.com/Jamie Sawyer. Really simple. I have, so for people who are watching your live who might want to follow me, who do not, my account is private now because of all the scammers I've had. So if I don't approve you right away, it's because I'm still researching to make sure you're an actual human being. Because that has been also, it's kind of neat being private now. I see all the scammers before, you know, so it's just to protect my content and my brand.
I've been debating about doing the same actually, just because I've had the same issue. And
mentally, I feel so much better since doing it.
Because you still, if someone's really genuinely invested in following you, they can ask to follow. So you still have reach, but it's more protected, you know, which I unfortunately is necessary now, right?
Well, even on TikTok, I had to go private as well because I had a scammer there, and I'm like, I'm never on TikTok, and I have a clone. I can't report on TikTok. They don't allow you to report like they do here. So it's just, so I am here. I share here, but I share my good juicy tidbits over on Patreon. I do have free stuff there that I share. Monday, I do a collective for the, you know, people who follow me, and I share still a lot of stuff for people who just follow me. I have a website, jamiesawyer336.com.
It's absolutely fabulous.
Thank you.
It's gorgeous. I was showing Dominic because I usually chat with him before I have interviews and stuff, and like, this is the artist that I'm speaking with, and this is their content. I was trying to figure out colors for the announcement and trying to figure out what would work with your aesthetics. I was like, this is Jamie's website. What do you think? What do you think about the She's like, wow, that's really nice. I'm like, yes.
Thank you. I do have a Facebook. I'm not on there much, but it's at Sawyer's Path.
Nice.
That's pretty much it. I mean, I don't try and keep myself hidden. Like, just follow the link in my bio. You can find all the places, you know. So
absolutely. Oh, that's wonderful. Well, thank you again for meeting with me. This was an absolute pleasure, and I'm so honored to have you join me.
I'm always a pleasure, Jules.
Oh yeah, I'll be sharing this on my IGTV and stuff. And so
Thank you.
Cool. Well, thank you so much, and I hope you have a wonderful rest of your weekend.
You too. Bye, everybody. Thank you.
Bye.